Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. Reunited, finally, I am joined as ever with my good friend Dan Wiseman. Dan, how you doing, bro?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. We're literally just saying it. It feels like it's been a minute, doesn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. But
Wow. Yeah.
I'm
I
glad
think
to
it's
be
been a while.
reunited, mate.
Me too. Me too. Yep. It's not the same. It's not, and I always feel like I always come on these solo episodes and I'm like, keep it short, 5, 10 minutes. And then before I know it, I've always talked for 15. And I feel so I had a big spot in the edit. I was like, oh my God, I was talking for that long. And anyone watches those, you are the real MVP because I mean, I get bored listening to my own voice. So God knows how you guys could do it. But yeah, this hits a lot better when we're back as a duo, mate.
You did a great job, mate. I do have to admit, you did a great job. And
Appreciate it.
obviously, you're taking on the full workload with the edit and the shorts. So give a shout out to Dan in the comments, guys. I was at a Panic at the Disco gig, and then I was out
That's
for
fair enough.
a birthday. So, yeah, my apologies on the podcast, guys. But we're here today, excited because Villa have won a few games. And Dan, I've got to be honest, mate. I have to pull you up on something. I feel like you're being too harsh on John McGinn.
Okay.
I feel like
Okay.
you've
Yeah.
been quite harsh on John McGinn. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, you guys who listen to the podcast regularly know how we both feel about John, and it's not that Dan doesn't like McGinn and he thinks he's shit, and it's all that. I think we're neither here nor there with John. Um, but I do think he's been really solid since he's gone back into
He
the
has.
side, and I think there is a lot of things that maybe go unnoticed that John McGinn does. I mean, he had a 95% pass accuracy, a 95% pass completion rate against Palace. I forgot who he played then. 39 touches, 2 accurate long balls, 1 shot on target, had 1 shot blocked, made 1 interception and 1 tackle. I think the point you were getting at is it just doesn't feel right, which I do probably agree with. Like, it's not necessarily the most natural position for John to find himself in. But I think and we did speak about it a few weeks ago. If you'd have said to both of us, would you be starting John McGinn? I think we'd have both said no. But I feel like now we're in a position where he's forced his way back into the team, and it looks like, I mean, especially with the injury to Boubacar Kamara, which is thankfully not as bad as we feared, but it's still bad, and he's going to be missing at least 5 games, I think it is, with a month out. John McGinn's almost undroppable right now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, like it's as you very correctly pointed out. I've got no beef with John. I think he's fantastic. I think we've been using him completely incorrect. I think we both have, right? We've both been saying
Yeah.
for a long time we've not been using John McGinn in the best way that we could, and that's all. I still am not 100% on board with this position, and I know that sounds crazy coming off the back of 2 really good performances. I mean, I thought he was really good at Goodison Park, and then I thought he was really good against Palace again. But I do sort of feel like he's shoehorned into that role just a little bit. So the beef I have with John is completely nothing to do with him, to be like, but it's more that, like, I don't know. I just sort of think my worry is, and it comes from this basically, mate, is John McGinn the ideal kind of player that Unai Emery would want in that position? I'm inclined to say no. Given the formation that we play, I think those 2 sort of wide, like narrow 10 positions that we play are the only real spots available to him, because we've seen that, he's not suited to those deeper roles, and I don't think he'd be best deployed in a midfield too. So it looks like those are the only spots that are open to him, and that it's not so much the short term, it's the long term that worries me, because it's like I don't quite think he's the profile that ideally you want playing in those positions. I don't think Unai, but we shall see. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong. But that's my only beef with it. But yeah, I mean, look, the midfield's going to need a bit of a reshuffle now, given Boomer's injury. So it'll be interesting to see who lines up, because we've not got a great deal of depth now in those sitting sort of 6-8 positions. And so it'll be interesting to see whether we reshuffle that. I mean, I can't imagine John will get dropped back into that position. But it's not like we have a wealth of bodies that are ready to step in. I mean, where's like guys like Leander Dendoncker? Like, we haven't seen him for the longest time, so it'd be interesting to see what happens there.
Definitely. I think McGinn's problem is he's like he's like halfway there in terms of like the profile for what Emery wants in that role. I think if you mix John McGinn and Emi Buendia, you actually
Yes.
get a Giovanni Lo Celso, which is exactly
Yes.
add in that system at Villarreal, right? Someone who's a bit more robust, but is a beautiful footballer at the same time as well. And that's not to say that John isn't capable of playing wonderful football, but I think if you mix, as I say, if you mix Buendia and John McGinn, then you get a Lo Celso type, and I think that's ultimately what Villa needs in the midfield. Um, so I'm very worried about this, mate. Booba, I took some time. I obviously listened to the podcast and your thoughts on it as well, mate. And in the heat of the moment, and obviously, like sort of what I was feeling at the time, I just lost my rag because to quickly touch on the Palace game, because obviously you guys haven't really had my thoughts. It was so poorly officiated, and listen, Dan doesn't like to come on here and talk about referees. We know that. We know that. But the fact, I think, was it Craig Pawson? It was Craig Pawson. I can't even remember his name now. Decore? Was it Decore?
Yes.
He made that exact challenge, if not worse, 5 times before he brought Booba down and injured him. It took that to get a booking. And because of the fact he went 65, 70 minutes without a booking, he goes and makes another challenge almost under 2 minutes later, and feels he can get away with it because he has done for the first, God knows how long in the game, and stupidly gets himself sent off for that challenge on Chambers, second yellow. I don't, on reflection, I don't think it's unfortunate for Boo, but I don't think that was a bad foul. But my anger comes from how poorly that game was officiated, because you book him up for one of the worst fouls earlier on in the game, then you stamp that out, and there is a chance that tackle doesn't happen, and that Boubacar Kamara is fit and available to play in this game. And it's frustrating because it's like games like this, we're now 2 wins in a row, obviously looking to make it 3 wins in a row. And when you're trying to put together a run, and it was beautifully clickbaited by you, Dan, that last podcast, European charge. If you're going to put on a charge, right, if you're going to try and get into the Conference or the Europa League, I'm not saying it is ever going to happen, you're going to need your best players available. You're going to need to keep winning games. And it's so frustrating because the narrative of how Villa's season could end now due to losing our star man in that midfield, Boubacar Kamara, Villa weren't good enough, they weren't able to consistent enough. When, matter of fact, it was a stupid challenge in a 3:00 kickoff, which not many people would have seen. I'm talking sort of outside of the Villa circle, and it's just really frustrating how like the narrative can change like that, because we've made so many leaps forward. And again, to repeat myself, something I always say, it's the manager's job to make the players better, right? However, if you're going to play Boubacar Kamara or Leander Dendoncker in the midfield, then, you're going to do better with the former rather than the latter. The players are limited at the end of the day. So it's just incredibly frustrating for me that we're going to go 5 games now without Bouba. And if I'm desperately looking for a silver lining, which we obviously love to do on this podcast, is that hopefully that puts a few potential suitors out of the picture, because that's 2 injuries now he's had this season. Maybe we can buy ourselves a bit more time with Boob on the books. I don't know. It's a frustrating one, mate.
Yeah, no, it is, mate. Look, it's pointless to sit here and talk about how important how important Booba is to Villa, and how much we need him in the side. Like, everyone that's watched Villa fans or not, anyone who watches this season will know that. Chambers obviously came into that role, which is interesting because that's something which people have been wanting to see for a little while, and it's mostly something that people have been clamoring for when a crisis has hit, really, when we've been short in that position and we've been looking for people to step up into that role. But we got to see it for a little bit against Palace, and I thought he was okay. I actually thought, like, pound for pound, I thought the challenge on him was worse than the one that was on Booba.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting. Like, I think it's just unfortunate. One is unfortunate, one is fortunate how they both land, because I think if Decore's follow through and connected with Chambers, like, that's a perhaps a worse injury than what Kamara's ended up with. So it's a crazy sort of twist of fortunes. Same with Booba out the team. And I was actually speaking to a few people earlier about this, and like green sky thinking this one, mate. And it sort of loops in quite nicely with everything that you were talking about there in terms of the European charge. Villa, there's a window, as I see it right now, of opportunity to break into Europe. And if you're a Fulham fan, if you're a Brighton fan, or if you're a Brentford fan, you're very excited right now because there's a space there. There's a space because should the FA Cup go to like someone like City or United or whoever's still in it by that time, they all shut down a spot, and there's a Europa Conference League spot that's open there, and it will go to Newcastle 6th, Fulham 7th, Brighton 8th, Brentford 9th. They're all in a real run in there. Obviously, Chelsea are down in 10th. They've had a really bad season, and you've got the other teams that are usually contending for those spots. Your Wolves, your West Hams, your Leicester Cities, people like that have really dropped off. And I think it's important for Villa now that, look, if we're being serious, like, Villa probably aren't going to make it into Europe this season. But it's not about that, I don't think. It's about showing that this project, we've always felt 2 or 3 seasons away from that. If we can place in the top half this season, I think we can realistically say, look, with the right business done, if we get lucky with injuries next year, we get the rub of the green, we could make a push for European positions next season. And so there's a real battle now that can go on within the squad. And it's like, right, who wants to be a part of that journey? Because we're all expecting, after the January window and everything that was said after that, that it will be a busy summer. Who wants to stick around? Because a big spot has just opened where, as you know, we've just said, Chambers, Dendoncker, whoever we want, to step into that position, whoever comes in there, stake a claim, make it yours. Yeah. Like, Booba's come out of the team, play so well that it's hard for him to get back into it when he comes back. Like, make sure that if you want to stay at this club, you want to be a part of it, put us in a good run of form now through a patch where, okay, the one saving grace is we're missing Boubacar Kamara, but thankfully we got through the harder games. We've now got a run of games against West Ham and Bournemouth, and you look at that one, 1st of April away to Chelsea. Hopefully we can have an update by then, but maybe even that game. I mean, they're only one place above us in the league, and they had a good result last night in the Champions League. Maybe they'll be in a better place by then. I think you have to expect that, to be honest with you. But we've got 2 games now where we can go and win. And whoever comes in there really needs to go and put in a good performance for me, because, as I say, we're getting to this crunch part of the season, mate, where it's like there's so many ifs, maybes around Villa players. I honestly think if you go through our squad, you could count 7 or 8 players where you could hang your hat on and say, yes, you'll be here next season, no matter what. There's so many players who are on that fringe. And so now's a really good opportunity, particularly in a spot where players haven't had a lot of luck. They've not been able to get in because of how Boomer's been playing. It's there now. It's there for the taking.
You've actually made me believe that Leander can step up.
Well, I hope so, mate. I hope so.
I hope so. I do, but I do like him. I think he's slow, isn't he? I don't want to sit here and slag off any Villa players on a Villa podcast, because I don't dislike any of them in this bunch, to be fair. But yeah, as you say, mate, there are so many teams gunning for it, and it feels like an opportunity that is almost too good to be true, though. And I think, we spoke about it a few weeks ago, didn't we? We were 8-9 points off European places last season, considering how poorly we ended, which is pretty crazy. I don't necessarily think that, if Villa somehow managed to finish 8th or 9th and there's 4 or 5 points in it, considering the poor start that we had, it would be hard not to be impressed by that rather than frustrated that we didn't make it, because it feels, as you say, it feels like an opportunity that's almost too good to be true. You get into Europe and then you're going to need to spend a lot more money, and I don't think we're ready for it. And I know we spoke about it before. I'm not going to say, listen, we shouldn't, I hope we don't make it, but because, if we do make it, then maybe it will further accelerate the job that Unai is doing. But somebody pointed out on Twitter actually the other day, Unai takes 5 days to fully debrief and analyse and do all of this stuff on the game. When you're playing Sunday, Thursday, you ain't got the time for that. I mean, I know he's obviously contested with that before in Spain and in other places, but it's interesting to see how we do playing twice a week under Emery. Obviously, we definitely need more players. But we should probably focus on West Ham, mate, because that is the game that we've obviously got coming up. And Ollie Watkins is a man in fine form. He's obviously scored in Villa's last 3 consecutive away games. If he scores against West Ham, he'd be the first player to do so since Dwight York, who scored in 4 consecutive away games. And that is a record that has stood for Aston Villa in the Premier League since 1998. Let that sink in.
Yes, mate.
That's
Is
crazy.
there another one? But there's a lifetime again. Feels like these
Yeah,
ones are not,
it's
don't they?
before us. And like, listen, I was annoyed mainly for Ollie and not managing to break the records. He had obviously a really good chance. I think Gaeta had really quick feet, which kind of put Ollie off. But 8 goals from around the expected goals tally now of 10 for Ollie, which is it's not a terrible return. Aston Villa have scored 31 goals from a 31.0 dead on expected goals tally so far this season as well, which I thought was nice. Thought I'd throw that one in there. And another stat, mate, I've had it confirmed. I know we've spoke about this for a few weeks now. No team in the Premier League has scored more goals in the opening 15 minutes of games than Aston Villa. There's 9 goals that we've scored in the opening 15 minutes of games. If we can score early, put this one to bed, I would love that, mate, because we've not had the best of records against West Ham in recent years, really, have we? It's been a bit of a tumultuous battle every single time.
Yeah, I think you can outright say that record's been stinking, mate. Winless in our last 9 league games against them, drawing 3 and losing 6. You have to go all the way back to 2015, 8 years ago, the last time we picked up a league win against West Ham. It was a 1-0 win at Villa Park. We've lost 6 of our last 8 against them, and that's as many as in our previous 35. So all of a sudden, we just hit this period where we just can't beat them. And I think part of the reason for that is London's not after a happy hunting ground for the Villa, really. We've lost 5 of our last 6 away games in the capital. Obviously, the one that bucks the trend there is that 2-0 win against Spurs, which gives us some confidence. We haven't won consecutive away league games in London since November 2020. So, yeah, I mean, look, we've seen Unai's villains turn over the history books, buck some trends and rip up some records and everything like that. And we need to do that here because just looking through some of these stats, mate, they really do not read nicely. West Ham won their last 5 Premier League meetings with Villa. Only against Coventry and against Villa have they won more consecutively in their top flight history. So we are a team that is ripe for the picking for West Ham. They're still a very inconsistent side, but they look to have sorted their home form out this year. They haven't lost at the London Stadium in 2023, winning 2, drawing 1, and conceding just 1 goal in those games. So I think, to be honest with you, they'll be looking at this kind of stats and being like, okay, let's try and get that going, because they're so patchy, they're so inconsistent, they're so hard to gauge. This is obviously, off the back of that 4-0 loss to Brighton, which preceded, a 4-0 win at home to Forest, and they're so topsy-turvy. It's really hard to gauge. But the thing we should mention is that they're off to Cyprus tomorrow.
Yeah,
and so that's one thing I think you really have to consider in this, because this fixture comes sandwiched in the middle of those 2 Europa Conference League ties. And I think it's fair to say that their priority will be the Premier League and staying in it. But, that's a big old distraction thrown in there, mate.
It is. The travel, the squad rotation, the lack of recovery time, all that involved. And the fact that with the early kickoff on the Sunday as well at 2:00, I'm sure West Ham are not going to be happy about that. But it's, I mean, listen, this has got all the hallmarks of a Danny Ings winner written all over it, mate. Danny Ings is going to score the winner against Aston Villa. It's going to happen. I've prepared myself mentally for it. I'm ready. I'm not going to be mad because I love the guy. I'll be upset though. I won't be mad. Interestingly, mate, West Ham are one of them teams. They can, as you mentioned last week, mate. They can either finish like 7th or they can finish 17th. There's like such a yo-yo-y nature about them. And part of that is just having players who are just inconsistent. Jared Bowen, a player who last season you thought you could rely on, that's not the case this season. He's had an expected goals tally of 8.29 so far this season and only scored 4 goals. severely underperforming in that
Yeah.
metric. And he's someone who, once he's beaten the defender in his one-on-one with a keeper, you would put your mortgage on scoring last year. So, these things, as always, they catch up with you. So, he's probably due a couple of goals, and hopefully, again, it's not against us. Another player who loves to score against us, mate, Pablo Fornals. He's scored in each of his last 3 appearances against Aston Villa, which is just... I'm filling people with optimism. I can tell you guys listening at home are absolutely buzzing for this one. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. My final note that I will, sort of end that negative spell, and I mean, maybe this is actually negative. Actually, I'm thinking about it. There were some quotes from Rice going around from 442 over the past few weeks, and he admitted that he actually wanted to come to Aston Villa. Now, this isn't breaking news. He has spoken about this before, but it has obviously re-emerged. He said, and I quote, "I wanted to go to Aston Villa under Steve Bruce. West Brom, Nottingham Forest, and Aston Villa wanted me, and I was pushing for Villa the most." Obviously, I'm sure everyone has seen the photos from the first season when we came up with him in the tunnel with Grealish and McGinn and JT, and looking like they was all having a good time. And what could have been, imagine that playoff winning side throwing Declan Rice in there. I mean, would I have even, what would I have done being the Berke Bjarnason fan I was?
Honestly, mate, it's there's so many sliding doors moments like this, isn't there? It's kind of crazy. Yeah, to be honest with you, it just strikes me as another loan where no one West Ham are like. It would have been another Josh Arnemar and £2 or whatever it was that the Spurs offered that one time for Jack, and just straight stings of another one of those. But yeah, no, I mean, he's been a player that's come under a lot of fire, hasn't he? Like Deckers,
Yeah.
And I do feel for him a little bit, because I feel like he's a lot of people go on about his attacking game, and it's like, oh, doesn't get enough goals, and I'm like, I don't
Have that guy.
That's not his job, man. Like, there's so many other players.
Gary Neville was going on about it, weren't he? Like,
that's what I mean. That's what I mean. And someone quote tweeted it was literally perfect. He was like, "Oh yeah, I like that Sergio Busquets, but he just doesn't score enough goals, does he?" It's a very good point. But no, it'll be a good game, mate. And look, like, as I said, I mean, on Danny Ings, mate, no player has ever scored for and against Villa in the same Premier League season. So if that record is still intact come 4:00 on Sunday, I'll be a happy man.
absolutely, mate. Absolutely. I've got to ask you for a score prediction, mate.
I think we're gonna win.
Yeah, I think we're gonna win.
Yeah,
This is rare. This is rare. Lads, back it up.
I think we're going to win. So first of all, I'd like to apologise for everybody, because Villa are now going to lose this game. It's undoubted. I'll put us at 2-1.
Do you know what? I'm going to match you there, mate. 2-1. I fancy us. And I'm going to go Bowen scoring for West Ham after I've just said he's been underperforming. Mate, I'd love for Ollie to score again. Obviously, it's not the record that he would have wanted, but it's another record that he can break within the confines of B6. And if we 3 wins in a row, I think the last time we did that was in March last year, and then probably the last time we did that in the Premier League was like fucking 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So let's just win some games, because I know, like, the 3 losses, it kind of felt a bit crap, but like the bigger picture is always more important, and you can kind of see what we're getting at. And also, one thing, right? I swear to God, if I hear people in the Holte end or wherever in the away end, it doesn't really happen in the away ends because there's probably more sensible people there. But if I hear more people booing and jeering and screaming for us to play it forward every time we're sort of passing it around the back and it goes backwards once, I'm like this close to ripping up my season ticket, because I can't be dealing with the complaints. We have to be patient. We have to trust the process. And I didn't realise how good we actually can be at playing out from the back until I actually watched that goal back. Obviously, it was an own goal, but it's almost hard to see in real time. So I don't want to give people too much of a bad time, right? I didn't realise how good that movement was until I watched it back from the goal that we scored against Crystal Palace. It was perfect, and that's exactly what we're trying to build. And I think the angle that they posted it from as well, which is kind of like near the away end. But if you haven't seen it, obviously you'd have seen the goal, but I don't know if anyone would have necessarily seen it from that angle. I implore you to watch it and never to criticise playing out from the back again, because that's Unai Emery's style. That is what we get. We've employed a Spanish manager, for goodness sake. We're gonna play out from the back. Like it would be so anti-football if he, if we were just hoofing it up. And listen, I'm not against the odd long ball every now and then, but the fact that they're consistently playing out of the back and playing in tight spaces, even to some fans' frustration, it goes to show you that there is a bigger picture that we're trying to uncover. So please, all I ask for is patience. That is all I want. And my ears to have a bit of a rest as well. Sometimes you need to pass it back. That's all I'll say on that, mate. I think yeah, we're building to something bigger than us, aren't we?
I agree. Let's no, mate. I think it's going to be a bit more jittery without Booba, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but
it's other things.
So to play it to bat for both teams, man. Yeah, you're right. But no, I've got to back the lads, Leander, whoever steps in. I'm looking forward to it, mate, and we will be here to talk about that as soon as that has ended. So don't you worry, guys. Yeah, as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, let us know by hitting a like and commenting your thoughts below. Shirt giveaway will happen soon. We're still demonetized, so none of you guys have done. It appears you guys haven't really been watching as much recently. There was a really nice comment left, actually. I can't remember who it was by. I'm going to quickly check YouTube Studio now. I did mean to reply, but I didn't.
We got a really nice shout out on Twitter as well, just whilst you're looking.
Oh, did we?
For it. Yeah, it was really nice. I'll pull it up now. So this came in from Ryan, who replied to let's say Henson's tweet. He was like, Heart and Holte do an excellent podcast too. If anyone's looking for one, very, very good insights and other original thinkers.
I love that. Oh, is that Ryan Lee?
That is, I don't think so. There was a
Ryan Lee that I was just referring to there. Lovely comment.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Maybe it is. If it's two separate Ryans, let us know. But yeah, you guys, I'm going to read the comment out now just so as I've acknowledged it. And there's proof of it. Just got to the end of the video. In the grand scheme of things, I suppose this won't count for too much, but I genuinely regard your pod as one of the most original out there. I don't want to make myself cringe or nothing, but like honestly, I don't understand why this is the most popular podcast for real. You always have my vote, guys, and I honest to God wouldn't change a thing. I don't get why the views have gone down. Hope this is just a stinky patch for whatever reason. I'd be gutted if you guys stop doing these. That is genuinely, that is one of the nicest things anybody has ever said about us, and I'm actually getting a bit emotional thinking about that. So that honestly, that was lovely. Ryan, your words are appreciated. As you made it to the end of that podcast, I'm going to assume you've made it to the end of this one. So a special shout out for you, Ryan. I mean, the views are stinky at the moment. I'm assuming it's to do with the ad. YouTube assured me it's not, but I think it is. But anybody who has been watching at the moment, Dan and I really appreciate it. And we've got some exciting things in the pipeline that could be happening. We've also got some exciting content that is happening.
Yes.
So, I'm sure it's stuff that you guys will love. And, as ever, this is a labor of love. Dan and I do this just because, we love Villa and I guess we love each other and we love talking about it. And there's definitely something narcissistic in us which is why we both do this, but it's from a good place. So, no judgment. But yeah, anybody who's listening right now, we really appreciate it. If you didn't know, we're on TikTok and Instagram. We'd appreciate you guys even more if you followed us on TikTok and Instagram. It's at Heart of the Holte on TikTok and at VillaPod on Instagram. Subscribe, like, comment, share, leave a review on Apple and Spotify, and up the Villa.